Hello, everyone. Welcome back to an exciting edition of Decentralizing AI with myself, Jesse, and Dustin.
Welcome. Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, we're excited to dive in once again. Never a dull moment in the world of AI. Always a lot to talk about.
Fable 5 is back now.
It is, yes, and I think we both have thoughts.
We both do have thoughts, yes. But I guess first, just like a check-in, how you doing?
I'm good. Building Vora, always an exciting time. We got some really cool things in the works. We've been thinking about how to integrate like a HSM secure like security module into our hardware. Uh,
What's an HSM?
HSM is a hardware security module. So it has special chips that are security hardened for generating cryptographic keys and signing with cryptographic keys.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. So one of the things it enables is like agentic payments where you can give your agent like an allowance and the HSM enforces that. So you set a policy with the HSM and it's, we'll say, okay, we'll sign for up to like $100 of stablecoin or Bitcoin. Um, and then, even if the AI was totally hacked or prompt injected or the like main operating system was totally compromised, it can't, since there's a separate hardware component that's enforcing the policy and controls the cryptographic keys that authorize the financial transactions, then that then the AI like can't spend more than you've authorized. So that's one of the use cases. Another use
Sounds
case.
incredible. I mean, it sounds like so useful.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it because we haven't really seen that out there in AI hardware at all, and it's kind of part of our Vora thesis of, like, bringing together that, like, Bitcoin security expertise into AI, and I think this is a really exciting example of how that can happen. It also helps with, like, certain authorizations where if you're controlling the system from the mobile app and this HSM, there's a pairing process when you onboard where the HSM does a public key exchange with the phone directly, bypassing like the main board. So this like sub board that's like extra security hardened, even from like a supply chain perspective, there's like more validation about where it came from. And
Wow.
so the board can, this HSM can know that an authorization came from the phone, like the iPhone's secure enclave will sign in authentication. Like, let's say you change the settings or there's a certain approval you do, like in your mobile app. And then this HSM can check that no, this actually came from the user's device. It's not just the main part of the system pretending that the user authorized something. So there's all kinds of interesting ways we're leveraging that.
So one thing that I've been doing recently is I set up I finally got around actually because of a talk Sarah gave, our guest from last time, previous episode. He is doing all these benchmarks and he just has all this evidence collected of just like how good the Qwen 3.6 35 billion A3B model is. And so I was like, all right, let's go back because I've like tried like 3 or 4 times to set up an open claw or Nemo claw or iron claw or other agents running on like a local model to like, have a personal assistant kind of thing. So, but every time you sink a bunch of hours into it and it's just like, oh my goodness, it never fully works. So I was like, okay, let's go back, let's do it. So I was overdue. It's been like a month or so.
Nice.
So I've been setting that up and playing with it, and it's surprisingly good.
Yeah.
Um, it's not perfect, and you do need a bigger model for some pieces.
Right.
But anyway, all of this is to say that
Mhm.
one thing is I'm basically tracking like things I want to buy and like gift
Really?
ideas for people, and like even just being able to like order groceries or put things in my cart or like for delivery services, and, like, I haven't fully automated it yet,
Right.
but for sure that's where it's going. Like, why I wanna just drop a note in a group chat with my wife and my assistant and be like, "Oh, man, I think we're out of eggs. Can we get another almond milk? Like, can you get this for, like, tomorrow morning or or just whenever you can?" And and then it can go pay for it. And the funny so having what you're describing, like where it has an allowed budget. And the other thing is you got to be able to sleep at night. I don't know, like, playing with some of these things, there are nights where I'm, like, lying in bed, I'll lie in bed, like, 20, 30 minutes, I'm almost asleep, and then I remember that I have, like, some long-running new thing I'm experimenting on my laptop that could totally get prompt injected, and it's on my laptop, and it's not as secure as it probably should be, and I'm like, "Shit, shit, shit," and I run to my computer, I'm like, "I'm gonna do this in the morning," like, I'm just too so, like, this whole, like,
Yeah.
you gotta be able to like, you need security, like, you gotta be able to sleep and
Yeah. I mean, it's the kind of dual edge of these personal AI systems is that to get the power, you want to give them as much access as possible. To get the best conversations, you want to give them as much data as possible. Um, and you also want to not censor yourself and not filter yourself. Like the more honest and authentic and open you are with your personal AI, the higher the quality of its responses. But that also carries extreme risk because if you're telling your AI the most sensitive things, then what if that data leaks? And if you're doing it with the cloud AI, it's just sitting there in a database somewhere and it will leak and it will get into the wrong hands. And and then, in terms of capabilities, like wanting the AI to be able to carry out your tasks means it should be able to have access to money to spend and access to different accounts and emails and all of this stuff. So,
one thing that actually has come up for me in setting up this agent and, like, having it start to take actions, and really, like, having it start to have, like, its own secrets and, like, secret management, um, and these agents, well, at least, like, the Hermes agent, it has some self access in a sense, like, the model can run commands on the machine that it's on, and, like, there's a decision to make, like, whether you give it pseudo access to the machine or not. But even if you don't do that, like, it's gotta be able to use secrets, but then you don't want them really getting into the prompts.
right.
And, I know people are working on this, but I literally was searching if there was some kind of app I could get on my phone, or I could run an app where I could get authorization requests. So, basically, every time it was gonna need a secret or something sensitive,
Right.
it would ping me, and it first of all, it would alert me. So, like, if something unexpected was happening, I could know about it. But then the other thing is that it could not just access those secret I could have more assurance that the
Right.
secrets lived outside of what it could access, and I could have more control and, you know So, but
Yeah.
I didn't find anything immediately.
Yeah.
There's there's something called In Physical, which is like a secret management open source, and they have like an enterprise tier, but I think you have to pay for their pro version if you're going to, be able to do, like, authorization access requests.
Mhm.
You don't get that in, like, the free version, and so that's if you wanna be, like, fully sovereign and, like, host it all yourself, that doesn't work. Um,
Right.
so
Just upload all your secrets, to this website and everything will be fine.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they do good security and stuff, but it doesn't
Yeah.
get over the fact that, it's strictly worse than, like, running it locally or air gapped or whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I just assume that if my data is in the cloud, it's either been pwned or is in the process of being pwned. I mean, how many days goes by till it's like, "Oh, here's this giant data breach that's announced," and, everyone's Social Security numbers, through some giant insurance company got hacked, and this is just the stuff that we learn about. Um, and also, like, seeing some of the incentives working inside of big tech companies where oftentimes security is just this annoyance that comes in and gets in the way of, like, shipping product. It's very difficult to get security prioritized, and security doesn't ship new features, it doesn't, like, bring in more sales, it just prevents some potential bad thing from happening, and when security is working really well, it just means nothing bad happened, and it's, like, difficult to, like, show the value, and people are like, "Why do we need this?" Or they hear about these attacks, and they're like, "That's really unlikely to happen," and so security oftentimes, like, it comes security the security team comes in, they may, like, do a hardening or make it, like, better than it was before, but getting it to a bar that where there's a very low probability that the data is gonna get hacked rarely happens, and these companies don't have a huge incentive to do that because when these breaches take place, customers don't customers don't change their behavior. They're just we're all kind of just used to it, so we're just like, "Oh, that sucks." Anyway, so
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me on one of the earlier a few months ago, people were playing with open clause, and there was this kind of clever trick someone was decided to do with they were working with their OpenClaw to try to make it more hardened, and they basically just had the OpenClaw tell it anytime there was an SSH attempt into the box. And lo and behold, like a few days after they had set that up, got like 50 attempts in like an hour,
Whoa,
and they didn't get through. But
wow,
yeah, I mean
that's
that
wild.
the security landscape is so anyway. I'm just it's I can't wait for what Vora's building.
Thank you, yeah, glad to hear that, I think we're kinda taking it to the next level with our security architecture with privileged, role separation, breaking agents into these different tasks and roles, each have different levels of access to data or to networks,
And this
um
is all, like for the end result is, like, something, like, I could just buy and have in my house, like, consumer level and
Yeah, it's for, average person, you don't have to be tech savvy, just plug and play, super easy to use. But we wanna create a platform where it is truly safe, it does truly protect your data. It does give the AI all the power that you'd want, but in a way that doesn't expose you to risk. And to create an experience where you really feel comfortable sharing everything with it, so you can have the best personal AI experience, which you can only have if you feel comfortable enough to give it all this data and to have these uncensored conversations with it. So that's why we're investing so much on the security side and the privacy side, because that's what we believe enables by far the best personal AI experience. And, one of the ways you can think of it is kind of like the Manhattan Project, um, where everything is in a compartment. There's some guy working on the fuse, and he doesn't even know it's an atomic bomb, or he doesn't know what like everybody's on a need to know basis and has the limited amount of information and access that they need to get their job done.
but and so it's like that for the agents, this
It's that
multi-agent
for
thing.
the agents, exactly, where you have an agent that is doing the orchestration, but it can't ever read any untrusted data, so it can't be prompt injected. It's a blind orchestrator. And then we have agents where they're able to read everything and synthesize everything, but they can't call tools and they can't access the internet. And then we have agents that can access the internet, but they can't call tools and they only have access to the limited data that they're given that the user approves to conduct their research task or whatever task they're doing. So everybody's in a separate compartment, isolated, and those compartments are confidential micro VMs. So there's real isolation between them, that's even, hardware enforced as well with, like, the, IOMMU capabilities of the chip we're using, so,
Wow.
yeah, it's pretty intense focus on security.
Are you, well, so now you're talking about security and, I mean, is this a good time to go into the Fable
I think it's
stuff?
perfect
Are
because
you
yeah.
are you able to run Fable on this? It feels like at one point, it feels like this is almost what it's been sold as something fantastic for cybersecurity
Right.
and like finding all the problems. But at the same time, I know that if you're outside these like companies that they have special agreements with, the safeguards are extremely strict.
Yes.
Have you been running into those?
Yeah, I'm running into the safeguards constantly, and I find it to be extremely frustrating. Um, and, like we talked about last time, I think these systems help the defenders more than the attackers anyway. So it's like somebody like me that is creating this security focused, privacy focused product. It's really important, like, to keep our customers safe. If I can, take the most powerful AI and point it at what we're doing and have it surface any weaknesses, any flaws, any vulnerabilities, that improves cybersecurity, that keeps people safe, that keeps their data safe. But I'm not allowed to do that. If there's even the word security in the context window anywhere,
No
the
kidding.
safeguard, will trigger. So, like, I can't have it anything even tangentially related to security or, forget doing security reviews. Like, that's, it's not able to do at all. But even for like, I'll have it just kind of do high level, like, auditing things or reviewing the code base to just figure out like what the priorities are and all these different things. And it will come across like a task that has some connection to security because so much of the product does. And then that's it. Like that context window is dead. And I have to like put a new session and give it like something very targeted and scoped that isn't anything security related. And then I can like get it to work on stuff. But I think it's ridiculous, uh, counterproductive, and really unfair, and it's taken a lot of my joy and excitement out of using it. Like, when Fable 5 was first released, I was so excited, and I was, getting all these amazing results.
It really felt like I remember the day it came out and, like, playing with it, and I was like, "Here we go. Next step up in models, like, this is a new generation, like, let's go."
Exactly, and we've been on this, like, trajectory where it's, like, just assumed, yeah, there's gonna be a new AI model, and it's gonna be mind-blowing, and, like, that's part of the thrill and the excitement to be using these tools, is not just the ones we have today, but this anticipation of, like, this is just getting started and more is coming, and now I don't feel that anymore. That's all in doubt,
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like, are we ever gonna be allowed to use an AI that's more powerful than what we already have access to? Who knows? There's so many strings attached with the safeguards, and it's like, well, you can kind of use it, but it's so hobbled that it makes it really frustrating and eliminates, like, a lot of the value you get out of it, and, you know, when it first was released, we had 2 weeks you could use it with a subscription. Now there's 1 week, and it can only use 50% of the subscription limit,
Yeah.
and the API cost is prohibitively expensive for, a tiny startup like mine.
Yeah.
So, I can't really get excited because this is just this taste of something I really want right before it's gonna be yanked from me, and I don't know if I'm ever gonna get access to it, and then meanwhile, this elite group of special companies and government agencies and whoever's, like, in the inner circle, like, they have unrestricted access to it, and I think that's really dangerous because if I have an AI that's if I have an AI that's more powerful than a competitor, that is a huge advantage, maybe even a decisive advantage, where they can't compete with me. And so the way we're entering into this new phase of AI, where the most powerful stuff is just for the few,
So I wanna get
really
into this.
worries me. Even
Well,
though it's in the name of safety, the incentives are really dangerous because there's a perverse incentive for the people on the inside to actually keep it that way, to maintain their advantage and not let anybody else in.
so this is where I have some thoughts here.
Alright.
So I think it is I don't think it's that big of a deal. Fable 5. I don't think it's as big of a deal as everyone's making it out to be. And you know why? I don't think we're in the, intelligence bottleneck anymore.
Interesting.
I think it's a data bottleneck, and it's
Mhm,
a harness bottleneck,
mhm.
and it's like a long horizon acting bottleneck. And I mean, I don't know, maybe I've said this before. I know you know this, like, I'm a heavy world model guy,
Yes.
and very much like, we're still in the early innings of, like, the harness game.
Mhm,
And I think it doesn't matter if you have a super intelligent model, because if it has no body, no authority to take actions, no access to anything, and it doesn't have data, it doesn't have access to the data, then, like, cool, dude, you're off in the corner, like, spinning in your own little imaginary universes, and it doesn't matter. Um, and so I think and this is an interesting thing, like, why is there a different data policy with Fable?
mhm.
I
Like the
want
data retention.
the data retention, like, enterprises can't use it, right?
Mhm.
Or basically, as far as I understand, the policy is that, like, any data that touches Fable, like, they get to use it.
Yeah, well, I think ostensibly it's that they can hold on to it for, like, 30 to 60 days, um, to help with, like, safety,
Yeah. And then
and
if it triggers the classifier, then they get 2 years to hold on to it or
yeah, something
something.
like that, yeah.
And is there something about, like, training with, like, they can train with that?
I think yeah, I'm not sure about that, but I think that might be the case too.
Well, so and I just you know, it's convenient, it's all about safety, but, like, how many times in the past have we seen, protect the children or, like, protect your freedom, and that's an excuse to, like, take away all of your rights? Or
Yeah,
so like, incentives, you said, right? The incentives are, right, people are now giving their hardest problems to Fable, like, things they couldn't get anything else to work on, and, like, there's time pressure, so people and now it's like this thing, it's like, well, I only have a week to use it. Like, maybe I should just screw it. We'll deal with it later. Let's just dump all of our company's data in there and, like, see what insights and, like, all of this, like, pressure and stuff. I wonder, I have these thoughts about whether, like, it's more of a data play, like, for them to get access to the data, and if the data is really the most important thing.
mhm,
Because and have other things to share too, but, like, we are seeing first of all, I've been using Claude Code and Codex, like, my main driver is, like, Opus 4.8 on high. Sorry, like, I don't know if is there extra I don't know if there's extra high, but, like,
there is, yeah.
okay, so extra high, basically the one below max,
Mhm.
and then a bunch of times I, like, use Ultra Code. Ultra Code is pretty great
Yeah, I
with the
like Ultra
workflows,
Code,
yeah.
yeah.
Um and then I use, like, Codex, GPT 5.5 extra high.
Mhm,
Like, those are, like, that's, like, my stack for everything.
yeah, same.
Um, and I was mostly just doing that for a while, right? And then I've set up this Hermes agent on the side with this, like, Qwen 3.6, this smaller model, much smaller model, like,
Oh, yeah.
dude, you can run that on, like, yeah, a lot of consumer hardware. I think you can get a machine for, like, a grand or 2 that can run it pretty decently.
Yeah.
Um
What, it takes up, like, maybe 24 gigabytes of memory or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, and, like, for a personal assistant, once you get it set up, that thing can cook pretty well. Like, there have been, like, multiple days so far that, like, I haven't felt the need to switch to a bigger model to get it to do something,
Nice.
and, it's running, like, cron jobs for me and all this stuff, and the other thing I've finally got around to, like, setting up is this, like, LLM wiki system.
Oh, yeah.
You've had something internally for a long time now, like,
Yes.
way before Karpathy put out his post about, like, LLM Wiki.
Yeah, I was already experimenting with something like that, and I'm already kind of like I've been kinda going this direction of, like, once you get to an LLM wiki, like, forget Markdown. Like, this should just be actually structured data in a SQL database where it can be queried, where there's vector search, where there's indexes, where there's relationships.
And you just let the AI agent write the queries?
Yeah, that it you give the AI agent access to tools that let it query
Are you
the
still
solution.
using the system?
Yeah, yeah, and it works really well because at some point, like, there's so much markdown that it can't efficiently even if you have, like, all these links between the markdown and other markdown that, like, indexes it and references it, it's gonna miss stuff, and the more markdown you create, the more likely something's not gonna get seen, something that's relevant will get missed. It's also just really inefficient from a token perspective because it's
Yeah.
having to grep all these, like, files and run inference on them. So, there's, like, this weird way in which he's, like, sort of forgot about, like, data structures.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
No,
with
no,
the mi
file system is all you need.
it's
Bash is all you need.
it's like, I mean, Markdown's cool for, like, human readable stuff, but, like, the machine's reading it. There's more efficient ways to, like, get it to know what's there, so but in principle, yeah, like, the LLM wiki approach and,
Well,
you
so
know,
the
that is the direction that makes a ton of sense for these kinds of systems.
well, and that's the thing that I'm finding is, like, once you get it set up and you keep getting this data added in and you get this you start to really get this accumulation of knowledge.
Yes.
And then I saw something very recently because I've, have been exploring some of these there's some great open source projects
Mhm.
for, like, there's one by, like, Nashsu, NASHSU/LM_wiki. That's like a GitHub repo. That one, it's got, like, a nice GUI, you drop it into a folder, and I think it'll just auto index everything that you hook it up to an LLM and it just crunches.
Hmm,
And then you get an entire wiki just for that folder.
that's
And then you
cool.
can, like, chat with that wiki structure and, like, all of that. So there's, like, great tools around that. Um, and I forgot what I was gonna say.
Yeah. No, I mean, but so with the Qwen 3.6 though and the Fable stuff, like, I buy the argument that, Qwen 3.6 or Gemma 4, like, I mean, these models are amazing. It's incredible. I don't think anybody thought it was possible to get that kind of power running on, like, consumer grade hardware, and I think that's gonna continue. Like, I think we're gonna continue to see efficiency gains and ways of getting most of what you want out of these models into smaller packages, and but for, like, heavy duty engineering tasks, I feel like there's still a noticeable gap.
Well, so that's what I want to get into. So just to be crystal clear, the Qwen 3.6, 3.5, this is like basic personal assistant stuff.
Right.
Check my email, check my calendar, do some web searches,
Which is
add
great for that.
add this page to my wiki, like, do these reminders, like, you know, run some simple cron jobs. Like, yeah, I'm not yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's like night and day between these bigger ones. But there's some other cool stuff I've been trying. So,
Nice.
um, the creator of Redis, the
Okay.
in-memory database,
Right.
very, very fast performant memory database. Um, I think maybe it's a hobby project. Maybe I have this wrong. Created this repository on GitHub where he made a custom inference engine, a custom runtime. So there's, like, llama.cp, CCPP, there's VLLM, there's like, other
SG Lang.
yeah, SGLang, yeah, these, like, inference engines. He built a custom one
Nice.
in C, and it is explicitly and solely tailored to DeepSeek V4 Flash.
Oh, this is what you sent me.
Yeah, I said
Yeah.
yeah.
I was
So
just looking at that.
so
Yeah.
DeepSeek V4 Flash is distilled from the DeepSeek V4 that came out not too long ago, like a month or 2 ago, I think. And DeepSeek V4 is, I'm pretty sure, over 1,000,000,000,000 parameters.
Mhm.
This Flash one is, like, I think 280 something billion parameters. It's a big model, right? Like, can't even really run that on consumer hardware. Okay, this is also where it gets crazy. So then he set it up, like, he did some testing and stuff. So he's running this inference engine, and it runs on the 2-bit quantization, which normally, like, once you go to 4 or lower, you really start. I know on benchmarks it kind of does okay, but once you go to like
Yeah.
2-bit, you're like, all right. And then people are trying 1-bit, and you're
Yeah.
like, okay, then what are you doing? Like, you just slice the model in half, or basically. Um, I mean, that's one reason why
More than
the
half.
more than half. Yeah, yeah. That's one reason why the quantized aware training is really kind
Yes.
of neat. But anyway,
Okay.
nevertheless, DeepSeek V4 Flash, right? Quantized or the full version, he just optimized this thing for specific hardware, including like Mac. Like it's
Yeah,
all
metal.
MLX. Yeah, metal. And I'm getting like with a 200,000 context window, I'm getting like 20 to 27 tokens per second.
Right.
And so much so that, like, I don't notice the difference between that and, like, Claude Code. It feels slightly slower than, like, Claude on a subscription or Codex on a subscription.
Right.
I don't know. I think those are maybe in the 30s for tokens per second.
I think they're faster,
You feel like they're faster?
but I don't know.
It's hard nowadays because there's so many, like, sub-agent calls,
Right.
and, like, you're not like, there's lots of stuff now happening, like, not in whatever harness you're using. Okay, but so here's where it gets crazy. Okay, so that model is like, okay, you're like, sure, how good can it be? Okay, but then you run that. So he even ships his own little agent, which is like pretty cool. Like his own little harness. There's like comes with like a DS4 DAS agent, which is kind of cool. You can yeah. Um, but there's a harness that um has gotten some more. Well, so I think before did we talk about oh my Claude? Oh my open agent became oh my open code, or it was vice versa. And then there's versions for like oh my Claude code, oh my codex, oh my I think something else. And I think the person or team that made that
Uh-huh.
has now made oh my Pi.
Okay.
So Pi is this harness that is I think Sarah was talking about it.
Yeah, and I think that's the one OpenClaw uses.
Yes, yeah.
Mhm.
So they have basically you can just imagine they kinda went crazy and added all these features to like, on top of Pi, and so it's like omp.sh is the URL if you wanna check it out. This thing
Right.
on top of open source models cooks.
Really?
Oh my god, dude.
Interesting.
I am, like, getting fantastic results from
No
this
way.
DeepSeek Flash.
Really?
I'm running it on a I'm running it on an M5 Pro Max, 128 gigabytes, right? Like it's a little bit of a it's like a higher end consumer setup,
Yeah.
but um, but they have he did release that for Rock M, the Strix
Right.
Halo,
Yeah,
which
I was looking at
that's
that.
a cheaper option for 128 gigabytes RAM, and even I think the DGX Spark, which
Yes.
that's also like I think right around like
Like
high,
4K or
like around
something.
like 4K or something. So, um, but anyway, you run OMP as the harness. You add like the ponytail. If you have you heard of the ponytail plugin? Oh, the
No.
ponytail plugin is the goat, dude.
Oh, I think I saw something about it. This was, like, to get really, um
Yeah, it's like the most it's what is it? The most maintainable code is the code you never write. The code that scales infinitely is the code that never the code you never write.
So this actually works?
Oh my, this is
Really?
so what's great, so in a lot of these harnesses, like I've been using it in Claude Code and Codex and now OMP, and you set it up as hooks. So it just like
Uh-huh.
after the first prompt goes in, this just comes right after. And
Okay.
there's like different modes. I just run it on full. I think that's the recommended. I have seen a bunch of times with the models like I could do all of this, but actually there's just this two-line thing I can do instead, and that's the ponytail way. So I'll do that. And
Interesting.
so man, I'm telling you, OMP, ponytail plugin, and try it with some of these like try it with like the beefiest local model you can run this DeepSeek. It's like doing great work for me so
Really?
far, and it doesn't feel prohibitively slow,
No
and
way.
now it feels like it feels okay, here's the other thing, why I'm, like, not as crazy I'm not psychotic about Fable,
You
and
have AI psychosis about it?
well, if it was about half a day, Fable came out, and I'm like, all right, here we go again, right? Just and then, man, there's a lot I want to say, but
Let's hear
I
it.
felt the psychosis coming back, and I was like, I gotta step away. And it's another thing is so
That's when I lean in. I'm like, "Oh, it's been too
dude,
long."
dude, I have like in the last 2 weeks, I've like totally changed my workflow. I'm never going back.
Wow.
Dude, I have been in flow states again. I went from like AI psychosis, like feeling bad if I didn't have 10 plus agents running on like different tasks in my like Tmux shells, like all these sessions, and like just kind of driving myself crazy, like trying to token max, and even then I like wasn't hitting my limits, and my friends are hitting like you're hitting your limits, and I'm like, what am I doing wrong, dude? Like I'm not hitting my limits. Um, so okay, so then what happens is HumanLayer, the
Yeah.
YC startup, they were in YC I think in 2024, and they've been exploring some things, and they just released this new IDE. Dude, I can never go back.
Wow.
This is like, first of all, there's this like raging debate between like, should you try and be a 10x to 100x faster developer,
Uh-huh.
and just YOLO everything, or chill the fuck out? Because the creator of Pi, is like everyone needs to like slow the f down, and honestly, the human layer IDE almost forces that on you,
Mhm.
and what ends up happening, so first of all, you gotta go check it out. You gotta go watch these talks. Like,
Mhm.
so Dex is one of the founders of HumanLayer. He has a talk that he gave, I think, at the AI Engineer Miami. If you go to HumanLayer and you look at their docs, like this video is listed there, humanlayer.dev. But he gave a talk, like a 20-minute talk in Miami, month and a half ago, and kind of went over this whole thing because they went really hard on like never read code. Like you're just
Mm.
dealing with like markdown plans and all this other stuff, and they basically have like backpedaled. And the thing is like, and this is where and they're honest about this as well. It depends on the software you're trying to write.
Mhm.
But if you're trying to write anything that's gonna like run in like cloud infrastructure, or it's gonna have users, or it's gonna have any kind of real data, or it's relied upon by other people. This is not like a personal app you build for yourself, right?
Right.
This is like production
Production.
level.
Yeah.
Um, basically like if you just you might be able to go very fast in the short term and feel like you're making a lot of progress, but AI cannot write code and maintain code well over long periods of time. And so he got into this, like
Mhm.
it doesn't know how to make like good maintainable code bases over long periods of time. And he really goes into this in a keynote he gave just a couple days ago at the AI World's Fair. I think that's on YouTube as well. It's a good
Oh,
talk too.
nice.
Anyway, long story short, they have a bunch of stuff where they essentially like everything is task based. It's like you have like a linear ticket or a Jira ticket or a GitHub issue. And now you associate one or more sessions, like Claude Code sessions or Codex session, any kind of session. Um, but it's all associated with that task. And every session is like very focused. And there's multiple times where the IDE is set up where like for you to jump in and review and give comments and all this stuff. So you go slower. Like I am coding slower. You know what I haven't done in like the last week and a half? I haven't backpedaled. I haven't had to like go back and undo a bunch of stuff or sift through like the AI just going crazy too far in one direction. And I find that when I use human layer, like so first of all, I'm still like not writing any code. The AI is writing all the code. But I'm there like checking what is the current state of the software? What is the desired end state? Um like thinking through it, going a little slower so that when the AI like does go off and code, it does it all. It's much more within scope, and it almost always nails it now. Like if you can prepare the context well, and you can get super aligned and like make sure you express what you want, and you double check that what it's going to do is what you want, and you're not leaving too much ambiguity or anything like that, it nails it. And then like you're done, you test it, you merge the PR, you move on, and like you feel like you're making very steady progress. And
Right.
and so then Fable comes out, right? So that's my last week. Fable comes out like yesterday.
Yes.
I
3 came
switched
out,
I
yeah.
switched to Claude Code. I boot up Fable. Dude, an hour later, I'm like, "Yo, I can't handle this." Like, I need my RPI workflows with, like, 7 sessions. I need Claude to be focused. I need even if it's Fable, I need it to be focused.
Oh, yeah. I mean, totally. I mean, I ran into this a while ago where I feel like I finally figured out how to get the production quality code, the long running, tasks, the maintainability, um, with, I think, some similar techniques that human layer is using. Um, one of them was to have, like, a firm division of labor where there's a meta agent whose context window is always just top level, and it never does any implementation work at all. And then, having dedicated implementation lanes that take extremely detailed specs and just reduce the spec to code, and then putting those through review cycles, and then having a tracking system so that there's, uh so all the progress is being tracked, all the planning documents are being tracked. Planning is broken up into implementation units, and all of that is persisted and tracked primarily so that the jobs continue to have high quality through compaction cycles because they can pull in the markdown and get all the nuance about what's going on. Um, so and then putting a ton of energy on planning, like, that's where I'm the most involved, and really, like, push the AI, like, be very skeptical, insist on pulling in research and other examples, like, you know, thinking through the edge cases, pushing back, like, that's where I'm the most involved. But then once that spec is in place and the meta system is in place and the tracking system is in place, its ability to, like, just execute on even a very complex plan that is gonna take a lot of commits and a lot of cycles, like, it's pretty much doing that flawlessly. Um, but I feel like human layer like, these are I feel like human layer is taking that these patterns and kind of natively embedding it in the actual, in the UI, in the system itself. It's not just some, like, ad hoc, like, piece together folklore kinda thing. It's like and I'm really curious to try it out. The other thing that seemed really cool is kind of the multiplayer.
Yeah, I haven't even fully used that yet. I've just mostly been using it in solo mode, like just me. Um, but that's well, and their whole thing is also like not only do you need to be aligned with the AI and what the AI is going to do and be very clear and understand and have like good mental models of what the system's doing, even if you're not writing the code, but also your team needs to have that. So like
Yes.
they have, yeah, it's pretty awesome. They just have this like first class, markdown editor with comments, and like if we were on a team, I could comment, you could respond to my comment. I think they have tagging, or if not, I expect it to come soon. Um, where yeah, I could tag someone, and like that's the thing, because sometimes you may not know on a complicated code base, like you might need to tag your coworker and have them review it. And then like what I just love, so even with what you're talking about, right? Like you spend all this time on the planning phase. Like, so maybe in a lot of ways, like, you've maybe been doing this for longer than I have. Um, I've been kind of playing with a lot of different also, it depends on the codes, like, I maybe some of my stuff has been a little less defined. I've been, like, trying a lot of experiments and stuff. Also, I have a bad tendency of picking, like, ridiculously hard problems. Like, it's the only reason I got into research and got into AI. Um, and there's this, like, curse of AI that I definitely fall into, which is like as soon as something is solved, it ceases to be AI. So like this like the curse of the whole field. Like they say this about like, dude, Google search was incredible when it came out. Like intelligently searching through data is was not something that like existed for a long time. And then Google came around, PageRank algorithm, like incredible. And no one ever thought of it as like AI after that. Like, "Oh, no, that's just the PageRank algorithm. That's not you're not intelligently searching information and organizing information. No, no, that's not artificial intelligence. You're just doing this algorithm." And so you have this like curse. And so, you know, moving the goalposts. Anyway, so I'm kind of like I always have these like crazy hard things I want to work on and solve. And it's not really fair to give an AI that like it's not magic. Like it's not like and that's the other thing, I guess, with, like, Fable and these other systems, like, it's not magic. Like, if there is like, there's some necessary requirement of context or data, and it doesn't matter how intelligent a thing is, it can't create that from nothing.
Yeah, for sure. And, I don't like I don't really believe in, like, trying to one shot things, like, have
Interesting.
the ultimate
That sounds like a
prompt,
hot take.
you know? You just get the best prompt and the best AI and go, like, I'm all about the kind of the AI human partnership, that there is a role that the human has that the AI can't fulfill, and there's a role that the AI has that the human can't fulfill, and there's, like, a loop that is developed between when the human has a role to play, when the AI is doing its role, and there's, like, a constant back and forth, like a true collaboration that I have found is where I can get production quality stuff and have high confidence in it, especially when there are, like, security critical and privacy critical dimensions to what you're doing or really hard engineering problems. And I think I find I have to be incredibly directive and have a lot of interventions. I can't just set it and go. It needs my firm hand on what's going on the whole time, or it will just kind of go off in the wrong direction. But that doesn't mean micromanaging it. Like, there's a
No,
certain,
of course, yeah.
structure or contours that I have to set and police very rigorously. But once I started to learn, like, where are the things where, like I was saying, like, if it has a very clear spec, going from spec to implementation is pretty reliable. Um, and then also figuring out how to test, I've been doing more work with, like, formal verification, which also helps where, you don't have to be worried as much about implementation details if you can prove that the result is correct.
That's like my favorite. I'm kind of jealous. Like
It's fun.
anybody now who has like a verifier like that or like some or even just some metrics or multi-objective, you know, yeah, multi-objective metrics that you can then like set up a loop against or set up like evolutionary algorithms against. I'm just jealous. I'm just like, "Oh, when you have that kind of problem, dude, you get to go to town, like auto research, like loops." But if you're working on messier problems or like less well defined, like, because what the alternative is like, you have to do some grunt work in like creating your own eval or creating a benchmark or creating a verifier. And I don't know, I'm just not working on problems that have verifiers right now, and so I'm like, everyone on Twitter is talking about loops, and I'm like, "Damn it."
Yeah, I mean, it's not the kind of eval or verification where I'm gonna just set it loose to just, like, auto evolve until it, like, hits the mark, which I think works pretty well for maybe more, like, performance related things, that's a little bit more scoped. But, uh, but yeah, it helps provide confidence about the end result and whether certain properties of the system are being satisfied. Now, of course, you have to be really careful because how do you verify the verifier?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, and the tests can all pass. Are you actually testing the right things? So, like, that's a perfect example of where I think the human intervention is really important. Like, really interrogating the AI and pushing it on what are we testing? Um, are these tests doomed to success? Like, have we just pre-wired them so they must pass? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
really
Make sure it
asking.
can't rewrite the tests.
Yeah, and it's like, I mean, I find a lot of it is, like, questioning and interrogation and critical thinking and skepticism, you know? Like, oftentimes, you just ask the AI a question, it will figure out what the problem is. Like, it's sort of like a leading question. We're like, "Well, what if this could happen?" And it's like, you don't have to spell out the implications. It's like realizing, like, you've just pointed into a problem space that it hasn't taken account of yet. So just, like, it's like having this rigor of thought. How do we know what we know? How do we know that was right? Have we considered something else instead? What does the research say? I feel like most of what I'm doing is asking those questions. Um, but what I found is, like, with a Fable 5, I still have to do that, just less.
It does feel like it just kind of gets things a little bit more.
Yeah, it feels like it's critical reasoning, its ability to kind of anticipate, "Oh, yeah, this way of doing the test coverage, like, isn't high quality test. We should do it a different way," and it flagging that on its own and kind of. And it doesn't mean I can just let it loose in one shot and, like, not have all this infrastructure and systems. It's just less of it. I'm less having to kind of be over its shoulder like, "Are you sure that's right? Are you
Well,
sure
so
that's right?"
let's talk about this. Do you think Fable is, like, approaching the plateau? Like, it feels like there is a ceiling here. Because, either you're getting lucky in that some of the training data that Fable got that these other models haven't got, maybe because it's more recent or what, or maybe Anthropic decided to, like, go add these new data sources or whatever it is, um, you be getting a benefit just from that. Like, so what's interesting is, like, even with these smaller models, sometimes you can tell, like, oh, this thing has been trained on this data a lot, or like a lot of data on this subject. Like, it really knows this subject. And then you go to a different subject and it's like terrible. And so it could be how much data it's seen on something. And what I don't know if Sarah said this in the thing, but um I think he said this during his talk or whatever, but that, I think this is a well-known thing that the more parameters there are, the more information that can be stored, and generally the more tokens you can train it on. And so from our estimates or what we've seen, I think Fable is, like, bigger, one of the biggest models. And so therefore it's like there's more data it's been trained on, and then it gets into this thing where, okay, so maybe some of the benefits you're seeing is that, right? Like, there's just more data. But then, like, and then there is, I guess, like, the thinking capability and the ability to, like, reason through on, like, the reasoning token part of things, and, like, being more consistent and maybe, like, applying, whatever it is that kind of like the rules or implications. If this is true, then this is true, and this is true. But it feels like at some point, like, those aspects plateau. And then it really becomes like speed and cost, like how long can you let it loose on this? And then just, like, does it have the data or the context? And this is kind of where I'm like, I wonder if Fable 5 is, like, I wonder how close we are to, like, some of those ceilings.
Yeah, maybe it will plateau and
Wait, and let me give an alternative here, right? So I'm not saying there's not incredibly useful stuff happening, but let me paint an alternative picture, right? The alternative picture is you have a 200 billion parameter model, and then you have accumulated this wiki from like the last 6 months of everything you've been doing with your startup and your code bases. And not only that, you've been accumulating all the research papers that have come out and like these communications. And then you like whenever let's just say like every month you do a new training run. And now you're taking this 200 billion parameter model and you're training it on all of that. Um, would that perform as well? Like I think that's kind of the open question because what I'm seeing now, like I am already looking into setting up like a fine tuning session on this like Qwen 36 35 billion from just my conversations with my assistant. And I know that's a small model, right? That's like 30, but like at least from a fine tuning perspective, like I can I can train that in like half a day or a day.
right.
So as data keeps accumulating,
Yeah.
I am gonna be able to just have this like I'll have my own model that's my own assistant that's like and it keeps getting better and better. And I think what that means is like it's gonna start to have more information that's relevant to me, and more up to date, and it's gonna become more accurate in the use cases that I use it, like even like the tool calling, all that stuff. So theoretically, should be able to run on like longer horizons. And
Right.
so and I think that's where I'm like, I wonder how I just wonder like, if I wonder if you might get crazy mileage out of that kind of system with what you're doing.
I agree. I mean, I think there's different use cases, there's different objectives, and it's kind of relative to that. So, like, I mean, I would absolutely take a smaller model that has access to more relevant data than like a bigger model without that data. And when it comes to like a personal AI, there's data that I wouldn't feel comfortable just giving to Anthropic or giving to OpenAI. So by definition, the local model is always gonna be better than the cloud model for tasks that relate to that data set. And and so and that's kind of the bet we're making with the Vora product that for the most personal information and things, it might be your genetic code, your genome. It might be, your financial data, your health history, you know, your, you know, private thoughts, your journal, like this stuff where when the AI has access to all that data and has the most real, authentic, most uncensored version of yourself, then that AI for those types of tasks or just talking to it on an everyday basis is going to be, you know, infinitely better and more useful um, than Fable 5, Fable 6, Fable, a million. If those fables don't have that data and you don't want to give it to them. And I think it can also reach a sufficiency bar where it's like for, open claw tasks or for certain types of, writing emails, self-reflection, like whatever bucket of it is, there may be this point of diminishing returns where, the model is reached sufficiency where it can competently handle all those tasks. And you don't need a higher parameter model to it's not gonna get you much more performance, out of what you already have, and I think that is the case, and I think there's probably gonna be other examples where for certain use cases, for certain types of, tasks that, smaller models that have better data, that have more focused training will outperform the bigger models. But where I think the gap may continue to emerge is for things that require, or really benefit from a lot of intelligence. So, like, even if you think about, human beings and you think about, what is the if you have a personal assistant, how many IQ points does the human need to have to be an awesome personal assistant? And also, like, are IQ points the most relevant there? Like, you probably want, at least 100 IQ points or something or whatever it is, but also, like, their personality and how well they know you and how loyal they are, like, those things are, just as important. Whereas if you are, working on the Manhattan Project and you're developing the nuclear bomb, like, those IQ points matter a lot.
But let's get into that, right? How much of that is like, was the Manhattan Project possible because that team of people had crazy high IQ? Or was it possible because there was a sufficient level of IQ and those agents, humans with that sufficient level of IQ, were able to grind in the right way? They were able to, like, go to the whiteboard, go to the blackboard. They were able to, like, build on the research that had come before and were able to, like, do that forward searching. Uh, because that's a process that has to be run.
Mhm.
Um, Now, for sure, higher IQ means you can probably search that space more efficiently, but you're not gonna get away from from having to do that search.
Yes, but you could spend all your time searching in the wrong places, or you could spend all your time, like, not realizing you've already found the thing you're looking
It's
for.
true, yeah.
Like, when you think about what they were working on, like quantum mechanics, and it's so counterintuitive, and reasoning about it, like getting an intuition for the physical phenomena and what's showing up in the experiment and getting a sense of how the electrons are behaving and why they're behaving that way, and having the mathematical modeling of it where can abstract it into a form that describes what it's doing. And there's so much, like, complexity, and there's so much information that I don't think you can raw brute force your way into it. Like, when we think about the great scientists, you know, like an Einstein, for example, like, there's this creative genius that can take all of this complexity and all of this nuance and all of this data and experiment results and, like, pierce it with something that makes it simpler and abstracts it and generalize it in a way that's elegant and beautiful is and that's the thing that I think is, like, where the intelligence is most required, like, again, like with the AI, if the problem is well scoped, there's a detailed spec and it just needs to implement it. Or if there is, like, really good verification loops, like there's an eval and there's a clear test and you just have to keep trying stuff until you, like, meet the requirement. Like, that I don't think we need, super duper intelligence for. But if you wanted something to, like, look at your really complicated, 100,000 line code base and, like, figure out some breakthrough insight, for how could it be done more beautifully or more elegantly, or, like, working with really brilliant engineers, like, I feel like they will come into a system like other engineers have been working on for years who are very competent, and some, amazing engineer comes in and realizes that the entire architecture is wrong, or there's a much more efficient or creative way to solve the problem. Um, and it's not and you can't just be like, you can't just emotionally, like, feel your way into it. Like, it requires this really intense ability to reason super precisely and keep a lot in your head at the same time and have the abstract machinery to be able to categorize all the things that are happening so you can have a mental model of it and then start playing with that mental model and rethinking it until it like snaps into place that there's some better way to do it. So I feel like that's where like a Fable 5, feels different than an Opus 4.8, that it feels like it's more able to like get all the complexity and like pluck out what is elegant or what is beautiful in that.
I yeah, I think that there's so in a lot of ways what you were describing, I felt like was at a harness level. Like
Mhm.
but it's almost like a harness level of searching abstractions.
Right.
It's
Right.
like and that's where a lot of, like, the clever ideas come into play is, like, Einstein realizes a very, elegant and elegant often means, like, small, uh,
Mhm.
very concise abstraction to represent something that is both accurate, um, and yeah, I mean, it's, like, accurate and useful, but th and but, like, that in so like, that's its own kind of search, so, like and there's even, like, been really cool research papers on this, like, from, like, some of the novelty stuff, so, like, some of the work I did was based off of this paper by Wiggins on, like, the creative system oh, man, it's been a while, but if you look up, like, Wiggins novelty or creative systems framework, you can find this paper, and it's, like, pretty theoretical, but he basically talks about, like, you can search within a universe of states, but then you can search in the space of universes, and but I think what you said at the end there is really what you want, like, really the benefit from these models is, like, they can so if they're bigger and they've been trained on, like, more and more, data and interactions, then the likelihood that they can find, like, patterns, like, very subtle patterns, or patterns that haven't been discovered before, or just to see how things are connected to one another, and so I think what that gives you is what you just said at the end is very well put, that it could know that something is creative or have the intuition about, like, why it's better to search the abstraction space in this way than another way. Because that was another thing about this work that I was doing back then, is that you think, like, there's a lot of states of, like, Earth and humans and what they're doing at any given moment. Dude, the space of abstractions is orders of magnitude bigger. And so, like, searching universes is way harder than searching, within a single universe, and so I think this, like, knowing like, maybe that's a lot of what you get with these much bigger models, is knowing when, like, you're kind of onto something and just being able to be more efficient in that search.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think it makes a lot of sense that maybe most, if not all, of what you can get from the bigger model, you can squeeze out of the smaller model with enough harness engineering and prompting and intervention. Um, like I kind of think like what we already have is AGI
Oh, I'm well past that. I thi
in the right hands,
in the right harness.
in the right
Well, and
harness.
and and trained to use the harness well. That's something we're discovering too, but
But it's like if you're expert level at using AI and you're using a good harness and you're using all these systems and all these processes and all these techniques, like it is AGI and it is a universal tool and you can build anything, you can learn anything, you can solve anything.
so on this note, I remember what I forgot what I was saying before about the LM wiki and that one project. What some people are doing is they're taking books, entire books, and they're creating wikis out of them, and then they start the agent from that space. And so the agent can query like these really dense, well-written textbooks or research papers on a topic area, and then they start to work from there, which which is kind of like, I think with what you were just saying, well, it just made me think of that, like, without those books, like, you kind of and so the thing is, I think that, like, Mm, I'm like, I don't think we fully explored the extent to which a lot of even the open source models, like how powerful they are or how close they
Yes.
are to AGI. Like, maybe the real thing, I mean, this is kind of ironic because this was how neural networks became popular again in like 2012, is like they realized the benchmarks needed way more data than people had been training on.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so that, I mean, the real breakthrough was there was a bunch of researchers that were like, okay, we've been using like, I don't know, 100 images or 500 images. Let's do 10,000 images and create a new benchmark. And all of a sudden, neural networks like flew past. This was like end of 2012. And then
Interesting.
everyone's like, oh, wait, these things are good. Um, and so I wonder if like if you want to get AGI behavior out of these things, maybe it's that you haven't set up the context. Maybe you don't have the SQLite database over all the books and all the stuff, like everything that someone who's gone through 8, 10 years of school and all the stuff they've had to read and all the conversations they've had and all the lectures they've attended, like you're not starting there with these. You just like you like expect the model to have somehow like given priority to that in its training data when you call it, and it's, it's kind of unfair in a lot of ways. And so this is just getting to my point where like I still think we're gonna get crazy gains out of even these the open source models we have now with the right
Yeah.
harness and the right like context information and accumulating that information.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're just scratching the surface. I mean, it's still a highly mysterious object, the LLM. Like, you know,
Aliens.
it's like an alien. Like, we don't understand its internals, and we don't know the limits of what we can do with it, what we can conjure out of it.
I'm dying for the day we get like some information theoretic proofs.
That
Oh
would be
my god,
nice.
those are gonna be delicious.
Yeah,
If anyone knows if these exist, like tell me, because
yeah.
again, like I'm not as caught up on the whole, neural network machine learning literature and all that stuff, but I'm just dying for like a pure proof almost that like with these many parameters, um, and this much data, like it's literally you're not gonna get any benefit out of adding more data. Like they've done some things with like fine tuning, I think, and showing that like you have to be really careful about fine tuning because it will like overwrite. But I don't know if they have like it'll overwrite like weights. So you have this catastrophic forgetting problem, um, where if when you train it on more stuff, it forgets earlier stuff. And like it would be amazing to like formalize that. And then you could know like, okay, I have this kind of work to do, and I have this kind of like knowledge that I needed to know. What size neural network do I need? What size large language model? Like, I don't think we know that today.
Yeah, that'd be really interesting. I'm also interested in, like, what would it mean to kinda separate the knowledge of a model from its reasoning capabilities? Like, if I wanted the reasoning power of a Fable 5, but I didn't care about its knowledge, could
Yes.
I get something much smaller that's just, and then I just feed it the data I care about, and it can reason over that really well?
So this is where, I wonder if Fable 5 is so good because it's a better world model.
It built one in its process of
Well,
training it.
all LLMs are world models
Mhm.
unless, yeah, I mean, they're literally built to be instruction following. So instruction following almost implies, now, I mean, it's not, I'm kind of like I'm being very like loose and abstract with my language here to be crystal clear. Um, what Jan LeCun's working on, what Fei Fei Li is working on. those world models are fundamentally different in nature, like technically, but nevertheless, LLMs have they have information about how states transition in a world. How you if you're in this if I'm here and I take this action to like move my hand in this way, like, oh, look, I'm holding the mouse is no longer on the table. Like LLMs have read a lot of stories, they have a lot of like world transition information, like they're maybe not accurate or reliable in the ways that like you want, but the more that they read, because almost all of their data is coming from agents that have world models that operate in worlds, aka humans. So like they're absorbing a lot of that. So Fable 5 could just be like the best world model so far from that perspective
Right.
in an LLM form.
Sure.
And I was almost like meditating on this, like this exact question about like reasoning. I don't know if you can really separate it. I don't think it's necessarily a clean separation
Right.
between how much knowledge and information is stored in the neural network and its ability to like reason because so reasoning is you're applying you're basically applying changes to your current state to get to future states, at least in like at least in that kind of reasoning, like, I mean, maybe almost all kinds of reasonings, but like you're starting at something and you're looking to see if you can find a solution that matches some criteria or solves a problem or whatever. And then you start saying, okay, well, what if this happened? Or what if this was true? Or what if this wasn't true? And then you see, okay, well then what are things like there? And then you can like kind of like keep going. But if that reasoning space is high dimensional, which it is in the case of like these large language models, then all of your information, the more data you've been trained on that is like relevant there, you're probably gonna be able to do that more efficiently, go farther in the right direction in whatever budget you have for thinking. And so I think they might not be very separable. Like,
Yeah.
and the reason I say that is like, if they were extremely separable, you would just get some kind of like rule engine. And we have very, very sophisticated like sat solvers and all those things. And like, I mean, this is also the interesting like, but those are very inefficient to some degree. Like sat solving is extremely expensive. It's an NP hard algorithm, right? So like what an LLM can do, like let's say you have a problem and you're gonna give it to an LLM and then you're gonna give it to a stat solver. So you could work with an LLM and encode it in the stat solver, and then you could run the stat solver. But and then the same problem you could give it to an LLM and you could let the LLM, run in a harness, like do thinking. The way that those 2 approaches are gonna search the space of possible solutions to see if they find a solution is extremely different. I mean, one of the great things about well, yeah, there's just, like, different guarantees, but in a lot of ways, I think the LLM, especially big LLMs like Fable 5, will be more efficient in searching because they can do, like, clever high dimensional tricks in terms of, like, jumping, or just like skipping wide regions, whereas a sat solver like almost doesn't have that extra context.
Yeah, I wonder if there is structure that once the structure is discovered, like, to discover the structure, all this data is needed, but once the structure is discovered, it can be extracted. Not necessarily perfectly, but where the knowledge part can be minimized. So, like, if you think about an
Well,
IQ
yeah,
test, for example, which is supposed to be a test of just kind of pure reasoning, not
yeah,
specific knowledge. Like, there's no, when was the US Constitution written or, who won World War I or like
yeah,
that's not on the IQ test. It's like, you see a bunch of shapes and it's like, what's the next shape? It's like inferring from patterns and, like, logical structure and reasoning. Now you could say, like, what you were saying made me think that isn't 100% divorced from knowledge, like, a lot of it is assuming a base of physical intuition, or you're, like, rotating a triangle in your mind or rotating shapes.
Well, or you're creating the space to then search in your mind.
Exactly, so
Like, you
there's
can represent the problem, maybe even collapse the problem in certain ways to, like, be more efficient.
but they'll give IQ tests to, like, a 10-year-old kid, so it's like you need a certain base level knowledge for the IQ test to make sense, but once that is in there, like, whether have, like, this deep store of knowledge about something or not, like, it's not necessarily gonna affect how you perform on the IQ test. Or another example is, like, you might learn something in school, like, maybe you study relativity or quantum mechanics in school, or you study law in school, and at one time you knew, like, all the details and all the names and all the dates and all the equations, and then 20 years later, like, you don't remember those details, but you still have the intuition that's stuck. Like, this general form or this general structure stayed, and, like, all the less important things, like, faded away. And
Well,
so, is there something analogous to that with the LLM where it's like, once it kind of has the structure, then some of those details may not be as important anymore?
this is why I think the bet that, like, Anthropic in particular, but other companies have taken to focus on coding, because, like, what is coding but taking, like, high dimensional, like, not well defined text or data about a problem and turning it into something structured that can be run. Like, every program you write, um, you are creating an abstraction space to be searched, right? And so in the writing of the code, all of the code you decide not to write is very important, just as important as the code you decide to write. That decision is like you cutting lines in the abstraction space.
Mhm.
And so this is the thing, right? If you have a model that's very good at coding in general, right? Then it can write a program, see how it does, okay? And then if it didn't do well, it can write a different program. And then if that didn't work, it could write another program. And so, okay, like, let's say you track all of the right? So now it has to have an external tool, like some kind of memory, or like a, just like an infinite whiteboard to say, I tried this, tried this, try this. And then, eventually you might hit context window issues or other things, but like you just let it crunch. But the other thing though is like the reason that it's like it's coming from like high dimensional data, like language or imagery or whatever, that is then it's deciding to like write the like if it's interacting with a human or something else, and there's a massive gap there. Um, and I think that like that's a reason why I think like the more things it's read, the higher the likelihood that it'll be efficient in like understanding like what are some of the best programs to try first and programs not to try.
Right.
Um, but essentially, like, once you just have a general coding model, like, you just need bookkeeping, right? And then it just becomes like, how many programs can you try, you know, with how much time and energy you have? And then it becomes an efficiency problem. And this is why, like, I'm just so bullish on harness development.
Yes.
And because I think, like, some of these models are just already incredibly good, but you have to seed them with enough context. They have to have a minimum size context window, like, and I think that will start to become like almost a bottleneck. But maybe not, because maybe that can be solved with just like or higher orders of abstraction, right? So instead of a flat, like, let's say you start doing experiments, right? You get to experiment 100, you get to experiment like 1,000. Maybe the first 1,000 experiments and their results, you can fit that into the context window, but you can't really do more. So then you could create an abstraction over that. So then it can just, okay, I've tried this class of experiments and now this class of experiments. And you could just like keep building these um, and keep searching. And so I mean,
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I mean, I think if AI just like, stopped today and we never got a more powerful LLM ever, like it would still be good enough to build anything we want to build. Like, and we would continue to find ways of getting more leverage out of the LLM probably for hundreds, if not thousands of years, even if the LLM stayed exactly as it is right now, with these more sophisticated harnesses and memory and prompting and context and agentic hierarchies and interagent management and communication. And it's just going to go and go and go forever. So, in that sense, like, we don't need a more powerful LLM, and, as long as everybody in the world can have access to what already exists, like, if we can just democratize that, which should happen through as a function of Moore's Law and memory getting cheaper, GPUs getting cheaper, greater efficiency gains in the inference engines, um, then what we have today will more and more people have access to that, um, and it'll be cheaper and cheaper, and it will be something we fully own, and it's open source, and it's open weight. And so that's the good side of all of this, that no matter how evil or corrupt, like, other players might become, or how super advanced AI may, you know, is gonna be withheld or try to use to get an advantage over people who don't have it. Like, this whole open source thing is happening and it's not going to be stopped and it is going to narrow the gap. But I do think even with that, there's still a danger because if you do have access to a more powerful AI, you can use it to help build better harnesses,
yeah, yeah,
better
absolutely,
agentic
absolutely.
swarms, better memory, better context engineering.
And it goes faster than
And it
someone
goes
without it.
and it goes faster, so even though you can do the same thing theoretically, you can do it faster, more efficiently with the more powerful model. There's less interventions, and the meta stuff is also getting improved by your work with the AI, and so we still have to be careful that we don't get kind of like a breakaway group that gets some kind of decisive advantage where it's impossible for everybody else to catch up. And even though both are moving, it's like with the open weight is like, 6 months behind Frontier, but then Frontier moves. So it's like we're continuing to get better with our open source stuff and our better harnesses and our better memory, but they're continuing to get, push their advantage. And if that advantage widens enough, um, then it could create a major issue of centralization and inequality in the world where, because like what's happening with the White House list, like this export ban list, is there's no law.
Can you tell me about this a little bit?
Yeah, so like basically, the way when Anthropic was telling the White House, like, so you know, rewind back, Fable 5 comes out. Um, Amazon tells, the government that there's a jailbreak that they're worried about, and then they bring in Dario and Anthropic, and they're like, "Hey, there's this jailbreak," and they're like, "Well, this isn't actually a significant jailbreak, and the other AIs can do the same thing, and there's no way to like eliminate this categorically." And so we're not gonna do anything, and then the White House is like, "You're making a huge mistake, don't do this." So it's like, what the White House's leverage in that negotiation where they're trying to force Anthropic to do something, and Anthropic is saying, "No, we don't want to do this." Normally, what would have to happen is Congress has to pass a law that has rules and regulations that then Anthropic and every other company would have to comply with. And the executive branch's ability to act unilaterally without Congress is limited to a small subset of powers that the Constitution vests in the executive, like the national security, like commander in chief powers that the executive has purely on its own, or there are laws that are passed by Congress that gives the executive branch specific powers to execute the law within its own discretion. And the executive has to derive its power from those sources or it has no power to act. So they want to act unilaterally to force Anthropic to do something. So this law was passed by Congress where there is export bans for certain technologies, products, that where I think it's actually when something is classified as a weapon, as a munition, then the executive branch can have an export control where that weapon can't be exported to other countries. And the only reason they have that power is because of Congress. But they have the unilateral discretion to add and remove things to that list on their own without having to go to Congress, without
Wow.
oversight from the judiciary, for any reason they want to add it or remove it. It's totally up to them. So this is why they pulled that lever, because they can just do it whenever they want, however they want. So they said, okay, Fable 5 is on this list, and now they can force Anthropic to do what they want and force OpenAI to do what they want. And so it's leverage that they're able to apply. But the dynamic that it creates is now the White House has they have a magical list that they're in charge of, and they get to decide who is on the list and who's not on the list, not just the export ban list, but because they have leverage with the export ban list, now they have total control over the list. Because the other thing they were concerned about was that Anthropic gave a South Korean telecom company access to Mythos in the insider program that only special companies get access to, like the unrestricted one.
Yeah.
And so the White House, they thought there was some, like, connection to the CCP with this South Korean company. So one of the things that they asked for that they got was basically, like, if the White House, like, Anthropic has a list of who gets access to unrestricted Mythos, and if the White House wants somebody off that list, they get to call Anthropic and say, "Get them off the list." And probably if they want somebody on the list, they can't, 'cause they've created a situation now where OpenAI and Anthropic are at the beck and call of them, and they get to decide who has access to it and who doesn't, in at the whim of a bureaucrat, not because there's a clear rules, not because there's a clear process, not in a way that it can be reviewed by a judge and you can say, "You excluded me from this and you weren't there was no basis for it." The whim of a bureaucrat can decide who the winner is and who the loser is. And if you're a corporation or government agency, the most important decisive advantage you can have is to be on this list because you have it and your competitors don't have it. And so now they have leverage over any corporation that they want to get to do something or they want to have influence over. There's the implicit power to say, well, if you don't play ball, you don't get to be on the magical AI list. And now you're going to get destroyed by your competitor. So that's the thing that concerns me is it's putting too much unilateral power without any checks and balances into one branch of government. And that is the only reason the Constitution works is because power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. It doesn't matter how good you are. If you get too much power, You're gonna be corrupted, you're not gonna use it well. So we have to spread it out, decentralization, and there has to be these checks and balances, but this dynamic, there are no checks and balances. Now, some of this is getting worked through the courts and will continue to get worked through the courts. There's lawsuits, there's First Amendment claims. The judiciary at some point will step into this and draw lines about the limits of what the government can do to regulate weights, regulate code, ban these things, restrict language machines, technologies that are fundamentally expressive. The First Amendment's gonna have a lot to say about that, but I think that's the danger we need to be careful about, that we don't just create this power for one government bureaucrat to be able to have leverage over all the economic players in the economy without any kind of clear, fair, or standard process and no way to appeal it. And I think that's the kind of naive side of, I think, some of the things that Dario has been putting out there where he's like, "We have to have this government regulation, we have to have this government control," and it's like, in theory, that makes sense, but in practice, what it looks like is a corrupt government bureaucrat, like, getting somebody on the list because, like, they're buddies or because they donated to their campaign or whatever, and so that's just as much of a danger as, if not more so. And the last thing I'll say.
So what you're really telling
Yeah,
me is that Mythos subscription is just a campaign donation.
that's what it's pretty much becoming at this point, and, the other thing is I saw a cybersecurity researcher online, and he was just like, "Where's the attacks?"
I've been wondering this
Like, you're
myself.
saying this is so dangerous and so whatever, it's like, where, like, I know there's things getting patched behind the scenes and whatever, but if it's so catastrophic and it's so dangerous, why hasn't there been, like, a single instance of some high profile cybersecurity attack that people actually feel in their lives? And so when we think about, like, the abstract theoretical danger that's being put out there versus the very concrete and real danger of, like, the abstract theoretical danger of it not being regulated that hasn't, like, shown up in the world yet, versus the real concrete danger of what it looks like when there's too much restriction and too much control. I think we need to really consider both dangers and not just focus on one or the other.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot there. I mean, first of all, thanks for going into all that. That was really great. I have mostly just been living in my terminal, so I haven't been catching up on all the news and stuff. Just seeing tidbits. Um, I will say one other thing is two big thoughts come up here. One is things are moving faster than ever, and yet like our systems are still so slow and so like so much like just legacy systems. And what I mean by that is like it's almost like all the members of Congress, like why can't they send out a poll to all of their constituents and their constituents who could have registered with like a private key pair that they generate, and they're like, this is, and I'm not saying this may not be the ideal solution for a bunch of reasons, but I'm just saying in the realm of what like like you should like you could use a zero knowledge proof to prove that you're, and I think they're doing this in Utah or something already with like IDs. But like you could prove without revealing your identity that you're a constituent of this person's district, and then something major comes down and they're like, all right, things are moving so fast. We need 24 hours. How do you feel about this? Right. And then the government is representing the people, and you could like submit a signed proof and they could get your feedback, and decisions could be made faster. But like there is, I mean, what are they going to like? I don't know. I guess the FCC like hold comments on their websites, right? Like they do things like that. So I'm just saying like it feels like certain systems are just not keeping up with like the rate that other systems are changing. And the other thing that I was thinking about, which, I'm I'm optimistic in general, and I don't. I think this what I'm about to say is like neutral, but it feels that we're undergoing civilizational change. Have you ever read Guns, Germs, and Steel?
No, I've heard of it.
So the book's great. It is a dense book. The premise of the book is why did the Europeans come invade like the Mayans? Why wasn't it the other way around?
Huh.
Oh, sorry, I might have like minds, but like,
Mhm.
oh man, I don't have
No,
all these details. But it's like why wasn't it that like the Native Americans on this like North American continent, why didn't they
mhm.
travel to Europe and conquer Europe? Like what happened? And one of the reasons, I mean, gets into it, guns, germs, and steel.
Mm.
And there was like cultural attitudes of the Europeans. They decided it was worth investing resources to go explore and go into the unknown. Whereas like other cultures in other parts of the world like didn't decide to put those resources on. And then also certain technological advances that also gave them that power. And like there were kind of clear winners and losers. It like, in terms of what cultures propagated and what cultures like didn't. And, you know, it just I wonder to what extent something like that is happening now on the planet. And it's like some countries have these capabilities, these like advanced technologies, they're gonna be able to have like orders of magnitude more power by wielding them. And those that don't have it are at a significant disadvantage. And that, like, you might naturally ask yourself, are certain cultures going to, like, diminish and other cultures, like, flourish? I mean, this kind of always happens, but it feels like there's times in history where, like, there's not that much change over people's lifetimes, and then there's, like, a period where, like, everybody's, like, life is like radically changed some point during their life because of these big changes. It just feels like now is like that period.
I 100% agree with you. I think now is a hugely critical moment in time, in history, that is going to have a decisive, impact on the kind of future that we have. And, you know, including, like, not just various countries throughout the world, but, like, whether we continue to have a free society, whether, like, our way of life continues at all, whether our humanity continues at all, I think is at stake with what's happening right now. And that's why I think decentralizing AI and open source AI is one of the most important things that we can be focused on right now as a society, because there's a fork in the road where in one direction, um, we have everything we do in the world is tracked, traced, controlled, manipulated. And there's super intelligent AIs that only government and large corporations have access to. And those, you have kids growing up today where they won't know a single day without the existence of AI. Their entire life, everything that they've thought, every decision they make, everything that happens to them will go into the AI. That data set won't belong to them. And if somebody wants to manipulate that person, persuade them of something, shape how they see the world, they will have a blueprint of their psyche. They'll know exactly how to get information from them, how to influence them, how to control them, and there won't be autonomy, there won't be self-determination,
So
there
it's
won't
literally like freedom just goes away. Like
freedom is
and
dead.
and you wouldn't even know it.
You wouldn't even
You
know
you
it.
would be believing you have freedom and yet actually having none.
Yeah, it's very Orwellian because it's like once you get into shaping people's language and shaping how they think about the world, like, they don't even have a conception of what the alternative is. And then you add, like, chips in the brain, neural link, where now the machine is in your head and you don't control it and it's influencing you and it's deciding what you're allowed to think and what you're allowed to see. So like we literally become machines and like this is basically like the Borg in Star Trek. Like if you like this is probably their origin story, went something along these lines. That's how you end up with that. And and then we have, like, this new legislation, like the KIDS Act that just got passed out of, the House in Congress, um, and it's happening all over the world, legislation, always, like, in the name of, saving the children or whatever, but it's like, you're gonna have to use ID verification to go onto the internet or to use your computer. You'll have to put in an ID and authorize it, and there's all these things about controlling information and social media, and so right now the internet is this source of freedom and, being able to dissent, being able to, like open source, the government tries to ban open weight AI. Like, if everybody has to, like, put an ID in to use their computer, like, there is no Pirate Bay for AI. There's no, like, Napster file sharing, like, "We're gonna do it anyway," kind of thing. Like, there's people in government where they want that to go away. They don't want the internet to be this, like, anarchic space where people are creating chaos. Like, they want every single thing that happens on a computer and every single thing that happens on the internet to be traced to a specific person, to be monitored, to be detected, and if they wanna shut you down, they can shut you down immediately. And so with that kind of like Chinese style, like social control, surveillance, social credit score happening with computers and the internet, then the AI elitism that creates this amazing power of influence and control and manipulation, like that's game over. Like it doesn't matter what the Constitution says. It doesn't matter we have a democracy. Like none of that matters because as a de facto situation, there is no ability to think freely or do anything that questions power or goes against it. And the alternative is that we have open source AI that no one controls, that no one owns, that no one can restrict, that everybody has access to, that everybody can run, that is completely protects their privacy, that's loyal to a single person and that person alone, that creates a balance of power so nobody can accumulate too much power because I have my own super intelligent AI and you have your own super intelligent AI and they're each representing our individual interests. So if anybody tries to get too much power, we can counter that. And so there's a balance of power, there's a decentralization, and it's open, it's verifiable, it's transparent, it belongs to everyone, it's shared by everyone. That's the only way we're going to maintain any kind of freedom in this hyper technological digital AI world is if we have the open source decentralization, and that is able to flourish and cement itself and never be shut down and restricted. And so this is our moment to be a part of that in whatever way, to play a role, to have an impact on something that is going to shape the rest of, you know, the next 100,000 years or whoever knows how long. That battle for that is happening right now.
Can you imagine how sad it would be? Like, you weren't able to, like, read certain books. You're not able to partake in certain community events. You're not able to, like, change your religion, leave your religion. Like, that's just, like, not cool. Like like
Yeah.
like what you're really talking about is killing the diversity of the planet. Like, diversity is what makes the world interesting. You know how many video games there are on Steam? You know how many, like, products there are in, like, a grocery store? Like like, and the rate of innovation that keeps happening, and that we have even more choice in, like, how we can spend our time, who we spend it with, like, how we consume, and you'll notice that, like, with so much diversity that we have now, like, things are working. Like, there's this fundamental goodness that people have. I've been going back to, like, Alan Watts recently, and it's only, like, this sense of, like, violence or control or manipulation, like, that really comes from a misunderstanding of the universe and, like, a diseased, like, point of view, and really just a lack of faith that, like that, the other person is, like, a human and has humanity, and, not that there's not conflict or there's not, like, things like this, but we're talking at macro scales, right? And then there's, like, this notion of, like, one event happens in one place, and now you have to make a law to prevent that from ever happening again for any of these people. I mean, it's stupidity. It's stupidity and ignorance. Like, it's one thing if it's ill intent for people misusing, saying, "Oh, no, like, something was misused here in this one episode, it's one point in time, and therefore we have to protect everybody." This is the other thing is, why are you trying to protect everybody? Like, we're all gonna die anyway.
Right.
Like, literally the worst thing that's gonna happen to everyone is going to happen to everyone. So this just lack of personal responsibility and, like, letting other people take responsibility for themselves, and, I know it's like a balancing act, and a government should try to do right by people, and protect them, and all this stuff. I'm not saying, like, that's not needed, but, like, there's just so much ignorance, and so, like, there is kind of this hope I have that more people using these models to think deeper and richer and, like, go through history, but it does feel like there's really being, like, power that's being accumulated in certain groups, and I don't know, I'm just, it just I feel like we have a good thing going, and we can keep it going.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're gonna win. I think that there's a lot, you know, the power of people, the power of open source is incredible. That you have people working all over the world from every kind of background, and every type of person, and they're giving away their work to everyone for free. And so I think, you know, and like we've seen a similar thing with Bitcoin, like the power of open source, the power of decentralization to take on these kinds of Goliaths and these like unstoppable superpowers. Like that's the story of humanity, David versus Goliath, like, the rebels versus the empire. Like we see that story play out over and over and over again, that there is a strength in the openness and to really have faith in the power of the human spirit and the natural law of the world, that not everything has to be controlled and pre-configured and predicted and determined, that there's a beauty to the way things unfold without any planning, without any prediction, that's that can accomplish things that no amount of planning or intelligence ever could, the kind of natural, organic way things emerge, and that's where we see the most creativity, like, outside of the elite, outside the institution, like, Einstein worked for the post office or, with music, jazz or rock and roll, like, all the new creative, amazing things are happening at the edges. The center tends to atrophy because it lacks that diversity and because of something else that you mentioned where a lot of this relates to how you perceive humanity and human beings. And the people who want the most control are the people that have hatred towards humanity or fear about humanity, where there's a where humans are so bad and so sinful and so disgusting that they have to be completely controlled on every level or they'll destroy everything. And that's why that train of thought leads to us becoming machines because it has an anti-human core to it, that humanity is fundamentally flawed and actually should be wiped out. Like, it should be replaced with something better that can't fail in the way humans can fail. And so that's why totalitarian thinking and dehumanized thinking, it all comes from like this fear and this hatred towards what the human is. Whereas if you have this belief in humanity and you see the beauty and the miracle of what humanity is, then you tend to be more supportive of democracy and open systems and egalitarianism because you have faith and you trust if we give people power, if we give people knowledge, if we give people resources, we can't predict it, we can't control it, and that's good because all this amazing, creative, unexpected accomplishments and ideas and projects and art and everything is gonna emerge out of that, and the more we try to control it, the more we're gonna screw it up, and the more we just kind of give it space to flourish, um, the more we're gonna have things happen that are incredible that nobody can imagine. And that's why I think ultimately the community of people who believe in that and who are working on that are going to outcompete the small groups that want control and just want to take it all to themselves. But we shouldn't get complacent.
Yeah, I mean, so I feel like that's really where we're going now is, like, my burning question for you, and I'll take a stab at this myself, not that I prepared this, but, like, right now, today, like, what should people be doing?
Well, I think, you know, it depends. I mean, if you're an engineer, I would say, contribute to open source, learn about how these systems work, run them on your own hardware, like get open weight models, use, get involved in gaining knowledge about how these systems work and knowing how to run it and how to use it so that you can help other people do that and we can um, build out the infrastructure to counter the centralized systems. Um, and if you're an entrepreneur, to kind of focus on businesses and ideas that help give people access to these tools and give people access to this knowledge. And if you're like, if you don't have, if you're not an engineer and you're not an entrepreneur, like, I think what everybody can do is just use these systems while we still have access to them to make yourself more intelligent, to learn more about the world, to learn how to use them well, like how to get good results out of it. And instead of rejecting it and abandoning it because you see dangers in AI or unethical things about AI or the way it's being used against people, I think it's important to not cede that ground, but instead learn how to use AI for your own purposes. Um, and ultimately, that needs to be like self-sovereign and open source and private. And that's still a little bit, I think a lot of people who are like smart and passionate about it can go out and figure out how to use it. And right now, with the equipment they have and the software that exists today, and people should absolutely do that. Um, and other people should be tuned to, supporting the businesses and the products that are going to come out that enable people to do that in a way that is universally accessible and anyone can use, and to get those systems, to use them, to spread information about them, and use AI to the advantage of humanity and the people, um, and not just try to reject it, shut it down, give the government total power over it, because I don't think those avenues, are going to be effective.
Yeah, I mean, I love that so much. There's some things that come to mind for me with that is I think what I would recommend that people do is start building your defense system. Like start figuring out how to use these tools, like learn about them, but then use them to kind of challenge your own thinking, challenge narratives that you see in the media or from other organizations. One of my favorite things so far, which I think I didn't see anybody predicting, is the rise of AI therapists.
Mhm.
And our ability to understand each other is increasing a lot. And so what I want to say is like, I Michael Saylor has all these great points that he like, he's like, protect your mind, protect your attention. He says it, he has a nice list that he lists off, but you know, improve your relationship with yourself. Use AI to work through any issue I mean, obviously you have to be careful if it's good to consult a doctor and all those things. Like you're responsible at the end of the day. This is these are just my thoughts. But what I mean is like get in a good place with yourself. And like I was not always in a good place with myself, like growing up and depending on your situation and other stuff, now you have like these models represent a collective version of humanity. And if you don't find yourself in a place where you love yourself and you have faith in your community and you have faith in the people around you and your neighbors, and you don't have, figure out how to get there. Ask the AI like what steps you might be able to take, what books you might be able to read, what if you're in a situation where you need professional help, what kind of professional help. But you're more powerful than ever. So if that's what you want, strengthen yourself.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
I would say learn to meditate,
Mhm.
learn to have more say over your mind and your attention, which again is another form of defense, right? If you're
Mhm.
spending all your time scrolling, or just reading anything on the internet, and a lot of it times like reading it directly, you're a human, you're not a machine. So well-crafted propaganda or FOMO or marketing or like algorithms that are there to like get you to like get upset and produce an emotion so you'll stay on a platform and you'll watch the ads longer. Like maybe you can use AI to put a barrier between you and that content and to help you understand or remove the emotion from it. Like what are the facts and be more skeptical of the stuff that you don't have more like ground access to. I would say the people in your life that work to develop like stronger relationships with those people. If you have issues, if there was something in the past that has caused some conflict with you, have you tried working with AI? You might be able to think of choices and options that you would never have thought of before by working through AI. And then you can come to a better understanding of that person and the situation they're in and their mindset and yours. And then I'm telling you, when you have better relationships with yourself and the people close around you, all of a sudden the future is bright, life is worth living, you're happier, and like our time on this planet is more fun. And there's nothing that there's nothing to be scared of. And so like start looking at like how you can improve yourself using these tools. Um, that's something like you can do today.
I love that, and I think that's extremely well said, and, I think there's ways that you can use AI to that make yourself dumber and disempower yourself because you're no longer engaging your critical thinking or your creativity. You just ask it to do something and it does it, and then you just take it and pass it on without thinking about it. Or like if you're in school and you're just using AI to like get the answers or submit the result. Because that's a lot of how we're trained to think is about, like, let's say in school is just getting the grade, you know? It doesn't really matter if you learned anything, if you get the A is what matters.
Grade maxing.
And and so I think that thinking is gonna atrophy people's minds and is gonna disempower them, but you can use AI to make yourself more intelligent and have more knowledge, and it can augment your power in the world and your ability to think in a extremely powerful way, but you have to engage it, and you have to go in and ask questions and interrogate it and direct it where you are the one who is setting intentions for it. You are not just a passive recipient, but you are in charge, driving the machine and pointing it at, like, the things that you're talking about, whether it's relationships with other people or reflecting on your inner life or things that you're trying to do in the world. But you can't just take it at face value. You can't just punch in that prompt, hit enter, and that's the end of the story. It's about the dialogue, it's about the dialectic, it's about the back and forth, and it's about the questioning. You know, I don't know if we talked about this before, but it's like in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, they have the super powerful AI and it tells them the answer is 42, but they don't know the question. And I think that is what being in an age of AI is all about. Answers are cheap. We can get the answer to everything. The thing that matters is having good questions and having real questions and being actually curious. So, like, when you go to learn about something with AI, it's not to get a grade or to produce an email or whatever. You're asking those questions because you want to know and you want to understand, and that's what's driving the questioning. And if it says something that doesn't make sense, then you ask it, "Well, why is that the case?" Or, "Can you explain it in a different way?" Or, "What about this and what about that?" Those are sincere questions that are being directed to getting knowledge from your interaction with the system. And so I think that is a hugely important skill, probably the most important skill in the economy right now is being able to ask good questions.
And the other thing I'll say there is because answers are so cheap, you have a superpower. If you're a human, you guess what? You are a universal verifier. You are grounded in this world. You have like a mortal body, you have like real limitations on like energy and time and resources, and you interact directly with the world, which means don't necessarily take the AI's answers at face value, verify if they're true. And there's like ways to do this, but work to seeing like what truth you can prove to see like what is actually working. Because and this is again like this whole AI psychosis, or if you like spend all day just like like one reason I didn't like Fable when it came back on is because I like gave it a bunch of stuff about kind of my situation and like business strategy, and it just rattled off this like super deep like it seemed well thought out. It seemed like the best answer I've ever gotten from any AI. And I'm just like, sure, dude. Like, how do I know this could all be like just another fantastically believable story that's nothing but a story.
Just a
Like
fable.
just a just a fable. Because it's not like at the end of the day, from a business perspective, like is someone paying for what like does someone actually like do you have you confirmed that someone wants to pay for like what you're building? And on and on and on. And so like any of this stuff the AI is giving you, like, do you wake up happier every day? Like, do you have, like, better, like, thoughts and everything, like, with yourself, like, with yourself? Do you have better relationships with people? Like, do you seem to be getting along and have less conflict with other people? And are you more understand, like, there's things, and again, like, you can work with the AI on, like, improving your ability to be a verifier, but verify the results. You cannot take whatever it says at face value.
Yeah, that's hugely important. And, that's where the interrogation, the questioning comes in. Um, and, they're masters at giving you something that looks right, but isn't actually correct. So always having that skepticism and digging beneath the surface is key.
Did we lose the, maybe this is a good time to wrap up.
Yeah. Well,
This was a long one.
this was a long one. We got to go on our soapbox for a while, which was always fun. But thank you for coming on this journey with us once again. And please like and subscribe and leave us some comments. And we'll see you on the next one.
Yeah, we'd love to know what you think. Take care and see you next time.